Good morning, and welcome to the Stylo News Intelligence Update for June 5th, 2026. I'm your host. In this early morning explainer, we're analyzing 2 weeks of open-source intelligence regarding the United States southern border. Our goal here is simple, to calmly deliver the facts and break down these complex networks, giving you a clear, objective operational picture.
This intelligence explainer is brought to you by ProWave AI, the developers of Stylo Intel Ops. Now, if you aren't familiar, Stylo News is the commercial version available on the web and mobile apps. It utilizes advanced AI to instantly turn raw, global open-source data, everything from local news to social media, into actionable, multilingual intelligence.
Let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll begin with a broad strategic overview, track some localized crossing patterns, analyze narcotics transit, evaluate social sentiment, and then we'll wrap up with an operational outlook to help you anticipate upcoming events.
Section 1. Welcome and Strategic Overview. The Hemispheric Picture.
To properly understand what's happening locally at the U.S. Mexico border, we really have to pull back and look at the broader geographic context. Because, the southern border doesn't just exist in a vacuum. Notice the upstream production zones originating far south in Colombia. That traffic moves through complex transit corridors in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. Mexico essentially serves as a massive consolidation layer where organizations, principally the Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG, manage that final leg into the United States.
Section 2. Primary Border Crossing Patterns, Key Nodes, and Adaptation.
Let's zoom in on the primary hotspots. Looking westward, those corridors span from the highly urbanized San Diego and Tijuana approaches, right through the Sonora Desert and into the El Paso and Ciudad Juarez logistics hub. Then, shifting eastward, we're tracking intense focal points along the Texas River corridors, from Eagle Pass all the way down through the Rio Grande Valley. These are the active geographical pressure points that continuous open-source reporting is flagging right now.
And within those specific corridors, we're observing some distinct tactical adaptations. Down in the Laredo sector, independent reporting showed a sudden, sharp spike in cartel smuggling attempts along vulnerable river terrain. That actually prompted a temporary redeployment of over 200 agents straight to that area. Over in San Diego, cartels are heavily utilizing high-speed vehicle smuggling and deeply sophisticated tunnels to bypass urban borders. Meanwhile, in the remote Arizona desert corridors near Lucaville and Nogales, intelligence has noted abandoned passports from Russian, Chinese, and other extra-hemispheric migrants. That tells us these aren't just local paths. They are highly organized, globally connected desert routes. And of course, El Paso remains a heavily monitored, high-volume transit zone.
Section 3. Narcotics Transit and Interdiction. The commercial shift. Now, we have to distinguish human foot traffic from the highly structured, high-value illicit drug trade. The narcotics transit architecture operates on a completely distinct timeline. It starts at the source, combining Andean cocaine production with Asian precursor chemicals, which are used for synthetic drugs like fentanyl. These materials move through their transit phases via the Eastern Pacific and Caribbean maritime routes. They're then consolidated at major logistics hubs in Mexico. Finally, the ingress phase into the United States occurs predominantly through official ports of entry, heavily utilizing commercial freight.
Upstream disruption of that timeline is incredibly active. Reporting from late May indicated that U.S. forces conducted 4 strikes in a single week on suspected drug trafficking vessels out in the Eastern Pacific. This is significant because it demonstrates a sustained, concerted focus on crushing the supply chain thousands of miles before it ever touches the North American continent.
But once those narcotics actually reach the border, the whole methodology shifts. Open-source intelligence highlights that a major volume of narcotics enters not via remote desert footpaths, but straight through via commercial semi-trucks and barges. Notably, we've seen reports surface regarding the cartel exploitation of legal B-1 visa truckers. Key commercial gateways, places like El Paso, Laredo, and Brownsville, are facing immense pressure. Traffickers are actively blending their illicit cargo right into the massive, legitimate daily trade flows between the two nations, which creates a severe detection burden for border personnel.
Section 4. Stakeholders and Social Sentiment. Triangulating the Truth. In intelligence analysis, understanding different perspectives is really just as critical as tracking physical movements. Right now, we're observing a distinct friction between official state messaging and grassroots open-source intelligence. On one hand, official narratives frequently emphasize significant disruptions to cartels and broad reductions in northbound illicit flows. But on the other hand, independent analysts and social sentiment tracking point to persistent cartel adaptation, massive ongoing seizure volumes, and the uninterrupted reality of commercial smuggling. Let's look at a specific example of this contrast.
Official statements often present an optimistic view of enforcement success. For instance, Mexican President Sheinbaum recently stated that fentanyl crossing into the United States has decreased by 76% year-over-year. That aligns perfectly with official messaging regarding increased binational enforcement pressure.
On the flip side, open-source sentiment remains highly skeptical, focusing instead on the absolute volume of the drugs. Independent reporting notes that Customs and Border Protection has seized enough fentanyl since October 2025 to kill over 100 million Americans. So regardless of any percentage drops, the sheer residual volume arriving at the border remains operationally massive. And that reality is what drives the intense, ongoing public concern we're seeing in the social sentiment data.
Section 5. Forecast and Operational Outlook, Anticipating the Next Moves.
Based on the patterns we've established over the last 2 weeks, the most immediate tactical concern is the evolving threat to border personnel. Intelligence indicates a notable increase in cartel surveillance drone flights actively monitoring U.S. military and law enforcement patrols, which has actually prompted the U.S. to test new counter-drone technology. Furthermore, personnel are facing rising risks from high-speed vehicle pursuits near urban ports like San Diego, the very real potential for armed resistance during those maritime interdictions, and the ever-present risk of escalation during routine commercial cargo inspections at busy Texas land ports.
So considering all these adaptations and pressures, what are the most likely events that you should be watching for in the weeks ahead?
Well, here is our near-term intelligence forecast. First, watch for route displacement. The intense maritime strikes we've been seeing will almost certainly push traffickers to rely more heavily on overland, desert corridors, and tunnel networks. Second, expect a continued commercial focus, which may unfortunately result in increased inspection backlogs and supply chain delays at major Texas land ports. Third, technological escalation will absolutely persist, particularly a back and forth involving cartel drone surveillance and U.S. countermeasures. And finally, keep an eye on political friction, as ongoing allegations of cartel corruption could strain bilateral intelligence sharing between the U.S. and Mexico, making joint enforcement efforts much more complicated.
Section 6. Explainer subscription. Go deeper with Stylo News.
Thank you for joining us for this early morning briefing. If you found this breakdown valuable, be sure to subscribe to the full Stylo News Intel Update Explainer on your favorite audio channel, or simply follow the link associated with this post. And to track global intelligence events for yourself, you can visit www.stylonews.com. As cartels continuously adapt their strategies to bypass a billion-dollar enforcement grid, the question remains, can intelligence and interdiction ever truly outpace the sheer profit motive of global smuggling? Until next time, I'm your host, and stay informed.